What's up, everybody? I'm Tommy McAllister, and this is the High Level Husband Podcast. Once again, Dianne McAllister's rolling with me today. So,
Hey.
these are, like I've said before, my favorite ones when Diane's on here because we have such great conversations. We're eventually going to be changing around our studio setup so we can, like, me and Diane can stand or sit across from each other and look at each other.
Yeah.
So it's more conversational-ish, whatever the word is. Because some of our best conversations, like I wish, where it's like,
oh my goodness, we have a camera for all the conversations we had.
whether it was like on a walk or post lunch or,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, like sitting in bed, like those are some of like our most best, like dropping jewels, gems of advice and tips and things like that. It's just free flowing. And so we're going to get that going here eventually. But right now this is doing great. And I just want to say I appreciate everybody's support because podcast has really been growing in a lot of different ways. And so today's a special one. It's just so cool when you're just intentional with drawing near to God in so many ways and drawing near to your spouse. And these things that happen is, man, God's just been dropping gems on our life in so many ways.
Yeah.
And last night, normally I read the Bible after I get out of the shower, but Diane was in the shower and I was like, man, it's probably gonna be a little bit. So let me just do my Bible reading now. And I read it. Next thing you know, like I'm recording a piece of content on it, like
going deep.
I told Diane when I got, like, you were getting out of the shower, I was telling you like what God was telling me in that moment, and not every time do I read the Bible do I go, oh man, God's telling me this, this, and this.
No, yeah, but you were really wanting to share. It was great.
Right. And I want to encourage everybody that when you read the Bible, not every time is going to knock your socks off. Not every time is God going to spin it some way for you. But the more times we read, the more it's going to up our chances, right? It's like if we, I don't know, buy a lottery ticket. For the more lottery tickets we buy, the better chance we have, right? But so that's just what we're all about, consistency. But here's what we're going to dive into on this one today. We're going to talk we're going to talk about deeper on this, is that so many people listening to this podcast are probably going through some heat in their marriage, some pressure in their marriage, and maybe it's been some time or maybe it hasn't been. And you're just looking like, man, why is this happening? Why is like everybody else just looks so happy? What's going on in our marriage? Why are we struggling? I'm just so frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to break this down for you. And it's going to be a little bit different than the way we normally speak on here. But in case you didn't know, the biblical word for marriage, when it's translated in the root English text of the biblical word marriage, and I can't even pronounce the word, stems from the word gem, as in like rubies, diamonds, different things like that. So it's just God's way of saying that, right? Like, it's just funny when you break it down. But here's the thing. How do diamonds get formed?
Gems.
Or gems, right? Same thing with diamonds.
Totally.
Under heat, pressure, and time. That's how they get to being a diamond that's magnificent, right? That's sought out by everybody and all this different stuff, by heat, pressure, and time. Well, guess what? We have a marriage that's sought out by so many people. They always say, man, you're so lucky, which you know right now, luck has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Because we had the heat and pressure as well. It's not like we just got married and it was like, woo, we're just killing it. It was heat, pressure, and time as well. So we're sought after in those ways, which is also our purpose in our life of why we do what we do. But it's heat, pressure, and time. So you're going to have to go through heat, pressure, and time to get to this spot. So I want to encourage you. That's just the root base of the biblical word of marriage. But here's where it gets wild on this whole thing. I'm reading the Bible last night, and I'm reading in John, and I think so it must be John chapter 2. I didn't write my notes down here. But we all know the story. It's when Jesus turns water to wine. It's his very first miracle. Well, what's one of the very first things God did in general was create marriage back in Genesis. That was like one of the very first things he did was create marriage. Well, Jesus' very first miracle that he does was turn water to wine, right? But check this out. We've all read that. So I'm reading it, going through it, and all of a sudden, it just hits me like a ton of bricks. And God says, you need to speak on this. Because here's what the banquet hosts. So Jesus, in case you don't know, Jesus was at like a wedding, and his mom Mary was saying, hey, they're out of wine. Could you go ahead and da-da-da-da? And he's like, my time hasn't come. And it's a whole long story. But then he ends up turning these 6 big jars into wine. Well, then it gets served to the party guests. And one of the banquet people says, and honors the person who's throwing the party. They didn't know Jesus turned water to wine.
Right.
But they said, most people start off their weddings with the best wine. And as people start getting tipsy, they bring out the less choice wine and not so good stuff because they're already kind of liquored up, right? They're kind of already at that numb
They're
spot.
not going to notice.
Right? And he says, that's what most people do.
Mm-hmm.
But then the banquet person said, but you saved your best wine for last. Because Jesus turned water to wine. You know, he ain't making some boxed wine. He made like that top tier wine. We don't drink, so I can't tell you what that type of wine is. But he turns this to it. He says, you saved the best for last.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when God said, that's how marriage is. Which we know this. We've coached on this.
Yes.
But it was so cool the way he spun that to me, babe. Like, as you know, I was just going off and telling you how he was breaking it down for me, is that in so many marriages, right? And there's a second part to what God told me on this. But isn't that so many marriages? Like, what happens in the beginning of the marriage? And how do most marriages, would you say, that what do people typically do?
So they put all the effort in the beginning.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, they put in all the effort. They try hard. They do things that maybe they're not even comfortable doing. They, really spend the time and thought in making a good impression.
They serve them. They bite their tongue. They're just like overly love, like all these things. Like Dianne said, maybe they're doing things they don't love. Oh, I love hiking. No, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
Oh, faith. Yeah. Oh, I love Jesus. My family we grew up on faith. I just love it. And then they do all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Then the marriage comes and they just slowly turn down the volume on all of that stuff. Maybe they'll go on a hike here and there. Maybe they'll go to church here and there. Maybe they're doing that. And then it just goes less and less and less and less. That is literally probably 85% of marriages who do that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's so crazy. Like, people think because now that you're married, you can let off the gas. Mm-hmm. That's like you just signing, because you're signing your wedding certificate. You're just signing up for the marathon. Now you got to train for it. Now you got to go run the race, which in this marathon, it never ends until one of you guys die. And then that's when it's really preparation for it. But so many people take that as the finish line. Mm-hmm. They start putting on weight. Yeah. They stop putting effort in their appearance. Maybe they spend more time at work. They stop doing those uncomfortable things, more challenging things.
Yeah. It's like they got the prize and they're like, oh, I don't need to put the effort in any longer.
Yeah. I can snap at you. I can get defensive. Yeah. I can get frustrated, whatever.
Yeah. But would you have done that in the beginning?
Never.
No way.
First date, somebody says something, you're not going to be like, shut up, and you argue with them. You're going to be like, oh yeah. And do those things, right? Yeah. So they let off the gas. Mm-hmm. So that's what that's what that story, it's not even a parable, it's a real story. Jesus turned water to wine. God was saying that's what so many people do. But here's the flip side of that, guys. With Jesus, because that's where the best wine came out, with Jesus is when it did. But in marriage, with Jesus, your marriage should only get better, and the best wine come out technically, and the best wine is you, as it goes on.
Yeah.
That's us improving and getting better.
Yeah, that's us getting better every single day. So by the time we're older, we're at the best.
100%.
For our marriages.
That's us getting even more physically fit than we were.
Yeah.
That's us getting more spiritually sound than we were. Mm-hmm. That's us improving our friendships. That's us becoming even more loving, even more encouraging, all of that stuff that's growing more on our purpose, that's doing all of those things. Mm-hmm. We're getting better because we have Jesus with us. And believe me, that's just not raising your hand at church and say, hey, I follow God. That's the very first step too. That's where churches get it wrong, is that no, you got to do what the Bible actually says to do. And when you do that, believe me, you'll get better. And by doing that, your marriage gets better.
Yeah.
But that's why the person said in that story that most people bring out the best wine first. And it's the same thing in marriage. Well, as I'm telling this to Dianne last night, I'm like, babe, it's so crazy. And I start telling her, then I was like, babe, but you know what's crazy about this too? I go, how's wine made? I'm like, how's wine made? Through the pressure, right? And there's even a little bit of a heating process to do a couple of things to remove. Then it goes through pressure and then time. Mm-hmm. So it's the same way that the marriage is made, heat, pressure, and time, like a gem is made, right? That the root word comes from. It's the same way wine's made. And there's different pressure times of the wine. There's different Different things. They have to do different times to do different things to get to the wine to be what it is. But what is the most expensive wine? It's not the one that was made yesterday. It's not the one that was made a year ago. The older the wine, guess what? The more expensive it is. And the reason why it's more expensive is because it's better.
It's better.
I wouldn't tell you because I've never bought one of those wines. Obviously, I've drinking wine in my life, but never had like the super expensive, so I couldn't tell you how great it is. But from what I understand, it's supposed to be really, really good, when you do it. So if it's more expensive, right, because the older it gets, that means it's getting better the more it's aged. That should be the same thing in marriage.
And with ourselves.
And with ourselves, right? We get better, the marriage gets better. Yeah. But that's where a lot of people are missing the boat on this, is that we're not getting better, then the marriage is not getting better, right? So, but it should be this way. So God was telling me last night, he's just downloading this to me. I'm telling you, I didn't sit there and meditate, pray, anything. He's just downloading this stuff into me. Hence why I'm so close to God. Hence why I preach so much to him. As he says, draw near to me and I'll draw near to you. The closer we get, the more we decipher his voice versus our friend's voice versus the devil's voice. And then he's downloading this into me, and it's like all these things are coming there. So now we know that it gets better. That is showing us a template for what our marriage should be like and what our life should be like, that we should get better. If you ever hang out with anybody or anybody that ever says, as you get older, you naturally put on weight, sex gets worse, the honeymoon phase is gone, all of that stuff happens, first and foremost, that's a red flag that goes off. It's a tornado warning, says run. You run from those people. Yes. You do not spend time with them. You do not listen to them. They're basically telling you get worse.
Yes, because all those things are a choice.
100% a choice.
Sure, it might be like harder to lose weight or something as we get older, maybe, Harder,
your metabolism will change.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't shift and change with that.
Exactly. So that doesn't mean you still can't stay in peak top form. Yeah. As that changes, you change up your routine, your habits, and all of those things. Yeah. It might become a little bit harder for that to happen. Sure, but if you just stay the same with your same habits and routines, that's when those things happen. Hence, why everybody thinks that's the truth, because they stay the same or they get worse. But as you're getting better, it gets better, right? There's been a study, and you might have heard me say this before, but the most productive decade of our lives, they've done studies on this, is from years 60 to 70. The second most productive decade of our lives is from 50 to 60. And the third most productive decade of our life is from 70 to 80. Crazy. You know what's crazy about that? That's what Jesus was saying. He saved the choice wine for last, right? What's also that saying is the wine, as it ages more, is more expensive. That's saying in our lives that those become the most productive years of our lives if we're doing the right things to get there, right? Why? Because by the time we're 60 to 70, we know who we are, our purpose. We know we know all the knowledge. We're not trying and erring and figuring things out. That's the first half of our life, is trying to figure things out. What is working? Who am I? Who does God say I am? What are my natural abilities and talents? You're going to fail at a lot of things. And eventually you're just learning. Those are all just lessons. Whereas most people fail and they think that God doesn't love them, or all these other things, or I'm just a loser, or all this stuff. You are a loser if you stay there. And that's not me calling you personal loser. That's just the truth. We all will be losing if we stay there. Yes. But as long as you keep going and failing more, learning, growing, by the time you get to 60 to 70, you have it all figured out in a lot of ways.
Is that why they call it the golden years?
Well,
Is that what they call it?
They do. Well, I think that's, unfortunately, society is going to tell you that those are the years you go and collect seashells, and that's not what those years are for. We never stop discipling, and we never stop growing.
But that would be the best years.
Right. And so that's those years you should be dominating even more. And you know how to time management and all of that stuff by then. You don't need to be grinding all day long and all this other stuff. And so anyways, those are the most productive years of life, which is all a personal choice. So it's just crazy how this is. I want to encourage you. The whole point of this podcast, and why we're going to keep it a little shorter today, was just show a little encouragement for you guys out there, that it gets to this spot where it should be getting better. And now this is where us doing specific habits do it. It's not just going to the gym and eating clean and reading your Bible and doing those things. All of those are big, but there's a lot of other things. The next podcast probably that we're going to do is going to break down one of those big habits that's changed. And we just did one of those in our life this last week. Well, I did. And drastic changes.
I'll get the after effects.
and on that stuff. And so this is where it's like there's plenty of things we need to be doing to growing, evolving, changing, shedding skin, doing all of that. But we can never stop. A pond gets full of moss and it gets moldy and algae and all of that stuff when it's because it's just sitting there. That will be our life. We need to constantly be moving. Yeah. When you find your great morning routine or routine that's working, it'll work for a short amount of time. Then you need to change it up. I promise you, this is the world that I'm in, not only personally with us, how we coach, but because I'm all around such high achievers. It's the same thing. They just didn't lock in their morning routine and keep that for 20 years. It's constantly evolving and changing. They're constantly growing and moving in new directions. God's a lamp at our feet and we're always constantly moving. It's just not one straight linear line of like, cool, go get a job at Costco and just stay there till you're 65. That's what society will tell you. And that's why people hate their life, is because they just stayed on that same trajectory and didn't grow and change. Not saying you can't stay at Costco for those years, but you got to be growing personally, spiritually, physically, mentally, relationally, all those stuff on top of that, right? And so that's where that's where all the other podcasts will come in. But I want you to just be encouraged with this one right here. It should get better. And if it's not right now, understand this. This is encouragement. You're going through the heat and the pressure phase to get to the diamond.
Yes.
You're going through the heat and pressure phase to go create wine. During that process, there's still things that need to be done, shaking it up, right? And doing all these other things that are going to happen for that to come. So even at like our stage, we're at that diamond spot, but there's still things that we are going through, that there's sometimes heat and pressure, not so much in our marriage, but in personal lives, which is a big part of the marriage, right? Because the marriage isn't technically a real thing. It's a made up word, right? But it's us agreeing on that. And as two individuals, as we say, the problems in marriage aren't the marriage, it's the individuals have those issues. And so there always will be heat and pressure, but then we'll get to that diamond. That the heat and pressure might then move to another weak spot in your life. Our marriage is at the diamond level. So I will encourage you, if you're at the heat and pressure spot, you have to keep going. But the key ingredient that made that first part good was that Jesus became a part of it. And that's when it got better. So if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, this isn't about religion. This is about a deep relationship with Jesus. This isn't about being a Catholic, a Baptist, a non-denominational, anything like this. This is about your relationship with Jesus. Yes, you should be involved in a church. Find one that fits who God created you to be, one that challenges you and grows you, and not one that's just lukewarm and just tells you that once saved, always saved type of mindset. So I'm telling you, God loves you and that this is a huge part of it. But if you're in that heat and pressure spot, good things are coming if you stay going and growing.
Yes.
That's the key thing. So we only got like 30 seconds here. But I want to just encourage you guys. This is what we do for a living. Work with professional athletes, CEOs, business owners, chart-topping musicians. All those type of people are people who typically work one-on-one with us. If you're that type of person, not saying you have to be in that field to work one-on-one with us, but that's the type of person we typically do. Secondly, we have a program, another one that doesn't work one-on-one with us and has amazing transformations and amazing people in it. Maybe that's more for you. Obviously, there's an investment because whatever you pay for, you pay attention to. And believe me, you don't want anything for free because you don't want just a bunch of randoms in there who aren't going to care, going to lukewarmness and water it down with their negativity. You want killers to be surrounding you. And that's what this program is for. And so if that's you who want to grow, become more on fire for God, want to be more respectful for yourself, and have that transfer to where your wife looks at you as irresistible, then talk to us. Shoot us a DM. Email us, highlevelhusband@gmail.com, or book a link down below. Click the link and book a call. But that call is a consultation to figure out if you want to buy into the program. It's not a free coaching call because we're here to take territory, and so should you. So, and if not, that's not you. Hey,
keep listening to the podcast.
Dude, listen to the podcast. Share it. All of that. Go into our social media. I think everybody should be in coaching, whether that's with us or somebody else, because we still have coaches. And this is what we do for a living. So I'll just encourage you with that. But soak up this. And if you haven't, give it a 5-star review. If you're listening to this on Spotify, and follow. And if you're listening to this on any of the other platforms like YouTube, then just like it and hit the subscription button. And follow and hit the notification so you get notified, and it helps other people get this as well. And it's just a way to support us. So we appreciate you guys. Much love. God bless.
Bye.